Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Creator Spotlight. I am Stella, your host, and in this playlist, I invite amazing people who have embraced their paths, their gifts, they transform their lives, and now are on a mission to help other people connect with themselves and transform their lives too. Today, I have here with me the beautiful Amy. She is the powerful force behind Hidden Nature events. Amy's work is rooted in the elemental fire, earth, breath, and is infused with a blend of ancient ritual, spiritual wisdom, and modern psychology. Hi, Amy. Welcome to this interview.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I am too, because your work is very unique. And we had a conversation before. You probably have so many different comments from people when you tell them what you do. And so I know that your work involves experiences like firewalking, glass walking, arrow breaking. What drew you to these rituals as, a tool of transformation for you and for others too?
Do you know what? That is the main question I get asked. Actually, is what on earth? How did you get into something like this? And to be honest, it's a pretty long story because I guess it's the story of my life. But I will try and condense that down as much as possible. Um, So to be honest with you, I was always someone who was quite fearful actually, and people seem to make comments at me saying you must be an adrenaline junkie, to do what you do. I am not, absolutely not. And I've always been someone who dealt with a lot of fear and anxiety, and I still deal with it today, despite doing what I do. And I think growing up, I mean, maybe things have changed now, but I don't think there was as much conversation with young people about managing their own mental health and expressing themselves, reflecting on themselves, and finding coping mechanisms that work, right? And because I didn't find that when I was young, someone who was quite fearful and anxious grew up into someone who was quite angry. And, I dealt with a lot of substance abuse, violence, and things like that. I think I was just trying to express my discomfort and numb myself, maybe, but, obviously that didn't lead me down a very clever path. Um, Things went from bad to worse, I would say, when I got involved in quite a violent relationship. And that experience kind of pulled the rug out from underneath me, so to speak. And when I left that, I came back to my mum's house with a bin bag worth of stuff. And I had no sense of self. I had no sense of anything in my life. And to be honest, I thought with all the experience that I've had, even returning to normality wasn't very appealing. I'd never really enjoyed life or felt any kind of dreams or purpose for myself. And that experience not only kind of shattered me, but also kind of triggered a bit of a spiritual awakening. And you can imagine that is just like a mess going on in your life. And I didn't see any way out of it, to be honest. I thought that experience would take me forever. And I reached out for support, I reached out for help, and I was told that's absolutely fine, but it's going to be about an 8-month wait list. And actually, in that time, I was most at danger to myself, really, and my family. To be honest, my family didn't think I'd see it through the year, and I didn't think I would either. And what I found that helped me was by taking back control and putting myself voluntarily in situations that scared me, right? And
Wow.
it's it was a big list because, like I
Mhm.
said, I'm scared of everything. Asking someone where something was in Morrison's, or making a phone call to the doctor without asking somebody else to do it for me. But I found the things that I could meet first. Not the fears are bigger or smaller, but the things that I could meet with and learn coping mechanisms to help me overcome them. And the fear didn't go away, don't get me wrong, but I became braver. And
Mhm.
I I started doing that list, and then I made it to things that I'd always wanted to do but been too scared, like traveling. I traveled extensively. I've started my own band. It was terrible, but it didn't matter because I wanted to learn about myself, and I did, and I found that it was so helpful, and I started to enjoy being alive and meeting people. And then I found that connecting with people meaningfully, sharing stories and learning from others, that really helped me as well. And I went and worked at a refuge for women, and I found that gave me meaning to what I'd
Mm.
experienced. Um, and then I just kept pushing myself, and I found myself at a firewalk in Basingstoke, and I saw I saw people visibly have a release when they did it. The
Mm.
the fear breaks down those barriers between us. It makes us vulnerable. It makes us more open. And I saw the effect that firewalking could have on people, and I loved the theatrical side of it, and working with the fire and the elements. And I was halfway through a counselling course. I was going to become a counsellor, and I said nope. And within a couple of months, I went up to Scotland, on the edge of Scotland, and I trained to be a firewalking instructor. And I've been doing that ever since.
Wow, what a story, what a story. And I love what you said. You had to learn more about yourself and you had to really connect with yourself. And yes, I agree. When you open up towards yourself more, then it's easier to open up towards others and then create those meaningful connections that you talked about. And then, it's like the world is mirroring back your own transformation. It's giving you the confirmation of like, okay, you're on the right path. You wanted to become a counselor, maybe, but I see you're on the right path. So I'm going to show you something more exciting that you're going to want to embrace and go forward with. So you mentioned a lot about fear and the fact that you have been afraid of a lot of things, throughout your life. So after all of these experiences, what would you say what is the role of fear in our lives?
My goodness, yeah. Do you know what, it's so interesting, isn't it? Is, as I say, someone who deals with fear quite a lot. I mean, you can look around you. You just have to turn on the news, look at the news, and there are hundreds and hundreds of reasons for us to all be fearful, right? Cost of living, threats of war, actual war, pandemics, divided communities. The list goes on and on and on. I think it's like 1 in 3 adult Americans has or is using antidepressants to cope. Um, it's shocking considering we're all connected more than we have ever been. More people are reporting fear and loneliness as their kind of default. And I look around me and I see that, and I can't abide by it anymore because I know personally the huge effects of voluntarily facing fears and experiencing life. And when I see that, and I know from my own experience, the long waiting list for support and all of those things, firewalking isn't the cure, right? But it facilitates a space where people become more open to sharing and reflecting and feeling like they're not alone in that. And it's not about the firewalking. It's not about the fear of the fire or anything like that. It's about all the fears that we carry around with us. And there are plenty and plenty and plenty of reasons to be fearful. However, we don't have to live in that state of mind, because when we do, it controls us. It keeps us in a cage of thought, of experience. We don't learn anything inside our comfort zone. We don't. We have to push ourselves outside. And I thought of it the other day, and I was like, it's like when you're born, you're like a box, a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle box, but there's no pieces, no picture on the top, and
Mm,
you don't know anything about yourself really, and you don't really choose what you're interested in.
mm,
That's just kind of innate. So I thought of it like it became almost like a game. Like you go around and you collect little puzzle pieces and you're like, oh, is that a bit of mine? Yeah, it is. But if it isn't, it's still cool because it's part of somebody else's,
mm.
And I really do believe that we are all expression of divine consciousness. And I believe that we all have our journey and our experience. And by learning about others or by having experiences, it's like you don't just learn about yourself or other people, you learn about reality as a whole in the universe and God or whatever you want to call it. And that's cool. That's exciting, you know? And what I want to do with my events is put that spark to other people and be like, come on, light up. Let's do something really cool. Let's be open. Let's be honest. Let's reflect. Let's have a cool experience, light a giant fire. You know what isn't cool about that?
It is amazing, and it wakes you up from that constant routine, like you mentioned, with the news and with the social media and the scrolling. It wakes you up to something that will open up the doors towards yourself, and it's so beautiful. And like you mentioned, with those puzzle pieces, you've experienced maybe something, and maybe it wasn't for you or it wasn't yours, but at least you know that you've experienced it, and then you send it back to the universe. The universe will know what to do with it, because the energy like never like disappears. It gets transformed and transformed. And I love that you mentioned how you decided to go through these fears voluntarily. There is something that I always love to say, that, you know, when we hear about, and I have been myself through moments of like being at the rock bottom, and you think, oh my God, I need to pick myself up. But after going through those kind of moments, I then think, why should I wait until I reach another rock bottom? Why not becoming more aware of like where are the parts of myself that need more attention, or maybe waking up like with things like you're mentioning that you're offering to people. And so with your events, Amy, can you remember a moment where somebody at your event experienced a huge shift or maybe transformation? Can you share more about that?
Absolutely. And the first thing that came to mind is probably the thing that it's me, even after all of this. And, I feel more comfortable sharing my own story because it's personal. And I actually shared it in the last podcast, but I'm going to share it again because for me, this is one of the most powerful moments I've had at a firewalk. So I was helping out the company that trained me at the Viking Festival last year. And I was greeting people, helping the whole setup of the afternoon. And a family came in, and it was a woman and her two sons. Her youngest had a rare genetic condition, and the reason why that immediately triggered something in me is because my oldest has a very rare genetic condition, and he was quite a bit older. But the family came in, and when it came time to walk the fire, the older brother carried his younger brother across the coals. And it was such a display of like bravery in the face of adversity and support. And my hairs are standing on end because it was just such a powerful moment. And honestly, I was weeping the rest of the evening because I had to see that, because I'd been living in so much fear, and every day then became scary. The unknowns, the different life to what you had imagined before, everything that comes along with a family member having a diagnosis like that. And I spoke to the lady afterwards, in between weeping, but she just told me that they didn't know the future for him when he was born. They had no idea what was going to happen, and they had to make a choice. They either live in fear or they make as many memories they can. They offer him as many experiences as they can, and they celebrate life. And that show of support, honestly, I really needed to hear that, because that's how I'd been living. So firewalking, again, it's not just about the firewalking. It's about being inspired by others. It's about seeing our own story reflected in others, and then seeing people with not just the courage, but the absolute determination to make their own lives as good as possible despite adversity. And you see things like that going on at firewalks all the time, and I think that's a really lovely place to be facilitating, you know. So even like you said about you learning things all the time before we recorded, this job, this way of life is constantly, it's the mirror again, it's reflecting back what you're putting out, and it's giving you the opportunity to learn from every experience and every person you meet, and it's lovely.
Absolutely. And when you see, say, just a promotional material about an event of yours, and it's like walking on fire, or all of these amazing things, it's so great that you now bring the story behind all of this, because when somebody would see something like that, first reaction might be like, oh my God, I'm scared, I'm not going there, I'm not even watching that. And yes, as a kid, I remember watching like all of these different amazing things, people walking on glass on fire, and I'd be fascinated. And even when I go on holiday somewhere and I would watch somebody do as part of their tradition in some way, it's absolutely fascinating. But then when you hear about this deeper meaning of what this brings into the world, it is so beautiful, because I can absolutely feel your heart when you're speaking about that. So, if you were to go a little bit deeper into the significance behind walking on fire, what would you say? What's the significance of it energetically and spiritually for you?
So the experience of walking on fire is going to be very different to everybody, right? It's very personal. It depends what you are wanting to get out of it. You will find some people will come just for a new experience, maybe an adrenaline junkie, you know, come in, oh, that's something I haven't done before, I'm going to tick that off the list. You might get somebody who's drawn to it, which seems to be the case more often than not, who maybe unconsciously is fed up of living in fear. And so for those people, it's such a release. And I'll explain it like this, right? I'm quite an overthinker, and I've got quite an overactive imagination as well. And obviously, if you live in fear or anxiety or things like that, the things that you create in your head are ludicrous. You know, they're just like, why on earth would I put myself through all of those things that haven't happened? And I create it so vividly that my body experiences it, right? And for a lot of people, we do that about loads of things, making a phone call, you know, like we said earlier, it could be something as simple as that. How's that person going to judge me? What if I stumble on my words? You know, it could be so many different things. When you wait for the fire to burn down, which takes about 2 hours, right? You are around it the whole time. It's hot, you know, and you look at that fire and you think, there is no way on earth that I am walking across that. You rev yourself up, your heart starts pounding, you know, you're stood at the edge, and you have no frame of reference to what it's going to be like. You have no idea. You walk across the fire and you think, for goodness sake, what was all of that about? You know, because most people, is experienced, they don't even say it's hot. And it's mad, and it's such a powerful reminder that actually, you know, they say there's nothing to fear but fear itself, and generally, I mean, it might be overused, but it is true. It's absolutely true. The stories that we create about our lives put us through more misery than, you know, actual life.
Hmm. Absolutely, because we will create a distortion of reality when we choose to look at our reality from a perspective that puts us in the victim mode constantly. And it's like I always say, it's what about choosing to look from the perspective of like, actually, I am grateful to be here. What can I learn from this moment? And although of course there are moments of pain and trauma, and yes, I'm super compassionate about those moments in our life, because we have to go through them and we need support. But I do believe that even in those the hardest moments, there is always something to be grateful for. There is always something to be grateful for. And I know, Amy, you mentioned that the story sharing is a huge thing for you, and you also feel like you learn from other people's stories. Why do you think this is such an important element for our society in general, really?
So that's a heavy question. I really do believe that there is so much truth to be had from different religions, different cultures, different faiths, whatever you want to call it. I believe that there's truth in all, in a way, because they're all expressing the one, the ultimate reality, shall we say, through their own cultural lenses. And that even goes with myths and, ancient tales. And I really love finding the wisdom in those tales. And there's a reason that we pass them down, right, through generations. It's because there is a truth and wisdom in there for us to find. And stories are everything. How I'm telling my story today is a story, and we have absolute power to step back and realize that we're actually the author. We're not just the protagonist or the reader, or, we are the author of our own stories. And by changing our narratives, we can change our lives. We absolutely can. And I really believe that it's like the biggest secret, but it's not a secret at all. If you look in religions and cultures and everything I just mentioned, they all point to the same truth, that our perceptions shape our reality. Absolutely, they all point to that truth. Even physics, quantum physics now is explaining that the observer has so much effect on how reality presents itself to be. Now, if we can take that and we can say, actually, the whole way we think about our past and our future is a story. We have
Mm.
the power to change that in any way we choose. We are always creating, aren't we? We can't help but create. Every decision we make, every word we say is creating around us. And if we were to only realize that, what
Mm.
would you do? And I think that element of sharing stories, being inspired by others, rewriting our stories, learning from the myths, and sharing, I think all of those things are good for everyone.
They really are. And then it's inviting us to listen. Like when somebody is sharing a story, it really invites us to open up our mind and heart as well, because you will begin to just be compassionate, or to relate to that person, or to just listen with your heart open without responding in any way, because somebody just needs to share what's on their mind. And I love that. And especially talking about the element of fire as well, like through the stories that have been passed from generation to generation, we know that there have been so many moments where people would sit around the fire and they would just share stories, and that would be their favorite moment maybe on that day. And so from working so much with the element of fire and earth, and with breathing as well, what are some of the messages maybe, or lessons that you have learned from the fire? And I know that even before we started recording this interview, you mentioned about your one of your favorite photos, when you sat with that beautiful fire, and then you looked at that photo and you saw something significant. So what kind of things did you learn from this beautiful element, fire?
You are getting me with good questions today. Oh my goodness. What do I learn from the fire? Well, really, I like to say that, yeah, actually fire is kind of alive, and it has really interesting properties. It needs oxygen to survive, it consumes to survive, and it has very interesting properties. And there is something absolutely magical in the fire. And we always like to say, and it seems very, very true, that you will get different fires for different occasions, almost like fire reading. And so you look at the fire and you see how it's burning, and you look into it, and really, again, it's just a mirror of ourselves. So whatever comes up in the fire, whatever that provokes in us, again, is inviting us to explore ourselves. Me personally, oh my goodness, I get lessons every blimmin' time I try and do an event, and I and it's good, but you know, I always think, right, the next event is going to be, we're going to be looking at trauma, or we're going to be looking at authenticity, and every time I go to do an event, I get a major lesson in that event before it happens. It's like the universe says, well, you chose the event, you chose the theme. Now let's check the foundations that your understanding is on before you dare to try and help other people. So honestly, I can't pick out one because I get them every single time. And now I know that I'm going to be very choosy about the events I do, because I think, I'm not ready for that one yet. But that's what the fire invites us to do. It's a different lesson every single time, and it points to our inner being, really. And you know, you mentioned that photograph that is my favorite one of me with the Viking longboat, and I'm looking up at the fire, and when whoever took this, I don't even know who took the photo, I just saw it on Facebook. I was like, oh my goodness, because it looks like there's a massive dragon in the fire. And for me, that was like calling me to recognize my own inner power. You know, I like a lot of people, I deal with a lot of self-doubt, you know, like everybody does. And that, coupled with overthinking and fear, can sometimes make me forget or make me really worried. And my, I would say, default response from old wounds is just to run and just think, I can't do it, it's fine, I should work a 9 to 5 job, I'll just do this, or I'll just do that, because it's easier than recognizing that I can create, and I have power, like we all can, and waking up to that and then fully controlling that is like, it's heavy, isn't it? It's heavy work. So that
Mm.
dragon in the fire, I think, was that.
Yeah, the confirmation that you're there to connect with your own inner fire, and your energy is absolutely beautiful. It just shows how much work you've done on yourself to have confidence in yourself, and then to have trust in fire, and fire to trust you to work in this beautiful union, because there has to be trust. And especially I love what you mentioned with, like, you choosing the theme for the event, and it's very interesting because you never know who is going to choose to be there with you and then experience that moment as well. So for those who are watching, maybe they're thinking, okay, we've heard so much about fire and firewalking. If you were to give us an example, or to walk us through, how would an event like this look like what somebody can expect, if they buy their ticket, for example, to come to one of your events? How would you describe that?
Okay, so what's important to know is that clearly, the way I am, I like to do different things. So I like to learn more. And so actually every event is different. They will have there's a layout of how a firewalking ceremony would work, but it's very unique dependent on the people coming, what the reason for the firewalk is. But they all have similar themes, right? Similar undercurrents running through them rather than similar themes. So I'm doing a summer solstice event in Basingstoke, and because it's a summer solstice, it's going to be a lot more theatrical. So people who come, we do the whole fire walk from start to finish together as a group, and that includes building the fire, lighting the fire, and then you've got about 2 hours in between where the fire burns down, and what comes in between depends on the theme. However, what I want people to do in that time is those points that I mentioned to you earlier: connect meaningfully with other people, reflect on their own fears and the experience, and that their own part of their own journey, honor that, and then to connect with nature and the elements. And those three things are what helped me in my own recovery, shall we say. So that's what the aim is, and we do that in many different ways. let me give you some examples. So one that I did last year was a lot more kind of teaching, if you see what I mean. We delved into the nature of reality with physics. Then we moved on to I have a 5-step technique to help people dealing with adversity. So we went through each step of that, and that includes breath work and visualization. You do that around the fire. However, other events, it will be more about people coming together in smaller groups and discussing self-reflection cards that they pick, or we might be listening to music. And I did one in the back garden a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Lord of the Rings for a lot of it. So it was going from like Lord of the Rings to like the nature of reality, and then like back to someone was like, oh, I'm hungry, let's get some food. And it was a lot more relaxed and but deep, because it was a smaller private event. You have more in-depth back and forth discussions with people, and it's way more relaxed. Where if it's a festival with 100 people, then it's a bit more kind of teaching, so yeah, that's the beauty of it. And from my point of view anyway, my kind of personality is that it's so open to work around it and incorporate different lessons or different experiences. It doesn't always have to be heavy on the lessons. It can be more a shared experience of life, so it really has that ability. But things for people to expect is that they're taken through the significance of firewalking. They're taken through intention setting. We always do that. People take part in an arrow breaking ceremony as well during the fire. And that is, if anyone doesn't know, an arrow break is when you take a real archery arrow, but it's got a rounded tip. Good news for anyone taking part. And you would place it in the soft bit of your throat here in between your collarbone, and you basically break the arrow using your throat. And again, that's a powerful symbol, a metaphor for breaking through self-limiting beliefs or breaking through any blocks that you have in your personal journey. And then all the other activities, like I mentioned before, it could be a mix of things depending on me and what I think and what the energy is, where we are in the cycle of the year as well. That's very much influences the energy that the fire is going to bring. And then when the coals are ready, we rake them out and people firewalk. And it's amazing to watch people do that. And we normally firewalk 3 times, and you do the first tester. And then once you know what to expect, we make it a little bit longer. It will be a bit hotter. And sometimes we do that one in silence. And then there's like a third celebration one, so people can dance over it. I've seen someone do a cartwheel over it before, I've seen all sorts. So,
Wow.
and then we have a little kind of decompression, from all of that energy. Sometimes I let my events go on and people can just sit around, and sometimes we'll rekindle the fire and people could just sit around and share that story and integrate that narrative. So that's kind of like the bare bones of it. But what is in between and all weaved through that is, anyone's guess, including my own, until I think, right, that's the theme of the event, and then everything will work from around that.
Wow, what a beautiful facilitator you are for these kind of events, that you really tune into every single moment to understand that, well, maybe this time doesn't have to be like I've done it a few months ago, for example, and you just tune into what everybody needs as well. And that's what it takes to be a good facilitator. You don't just do things because they've done in a similar way, you've done them in a similar way in the past. You adapt and you work with seasons, as you said as well. This is so powerful because there is a different energy in every season, and that's so precious to know how to work with that as well. So to everyone who's watching us, please check the description of this video to know how you can connect with Amy and how you can just see all the amazing events she's working on. You may find this episode immediately after we post it or later. So make sure you're checking the description of this video to know how you can connect with Amy. Now, Amy, as we're wrapping up this episode, if there is someone watching and they're thinking, fear has been a huge step of my life. Like I've been afraid of everything, almost everything. What would you say could be the first step for them to learn how to work with this energy? What would you suggest? Or just some sort of like a guidance that you would want to share with them today?
Yeah, okay, that's lovely. That's lovely. So I would say anyone who's living with fear, number one, you're not alone. Most of us do. And I would say the most helpful things are to learn actually about fear. And I teach this in my workshops as well, where fear originates, those conversations that go on in between the brain, the different areas, and how it has physical symptoms on you personally, right? Because it's very individual. I would say get the science down. It's not too hard to understand. It's very easy to find that information online. Get the science down of physically how fear works. And then you're going to want to think and reflect about what coping mechanisms resonate with you. Try them all. There's plenty. There's so many that you could try. Something's got to work, whether it's journaling, breath work, visualization, it could be reframing things, whatever it is that's your bag. There's something out there for you to help you when fear starts arising. Next, what I did was create, like, you can find them online actually, like fear ladders or fear mountain, whatever you want to call it. And you start writing down everything that you're scared of, absolutely everything. Put them up in your little mountain or your ladder. The ones at the bottom, it's not like the fear is bigger or smaller, but that's the easiest one that you can access. Like I said, if you're scared about, if you get anxious when you start speaking to strangers, maybe ask somebody where something is in the shop, but using those coping mechanisms that you found that resonate with you. So start doing those things, start doing them, start building them up, start doing them more, start realizing the benefits that are to be had in your own life. Start doing that, then start writing down things that you've always wanted to do but you've been too scared to do, and do those things too. And then just keep going, keep finding and making memories that you can pull upon of moments where you've overcome something that you did not feel like you would be able to overcome. Get those, store them in your little bank, in your memory bank of moments of power, and step outside your comfort zone, because that's exactly where you need to be in order to heal, in order to learn more, in order to just be passionate about life. Come and do some firewalking.
Yes, yes. Come and do some fireworking. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for your beautiful presence. And thank you to everyone who's watching this episode. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like this video, let us know your thoughts, and check out the description to know how you can connect with Amy and myself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.